we invited you to share with you our concerns with regard to what is happening to civic space in this country, the way the current regime is harassing civil society organizations, it's harassing civil society leaders. Now, with the recent incident where the staff of Africa Institute for Energy Governance, AFIEGO, were arrested, we are also seeing that this harassment is now extending beyond the organizations and the leaders to also cover the staff of these organizations. And we think that this is a very, very bad trend for the country, because normally what happens is that when institutions of civil society are attacked, because right now they are mainly attacking NGOs, but you know that the same attack has been going on against the media, it has been going on against other civic organizations, and so the reason we invited you is to share with you our concerns, and we're always grateful that you become our voices in communicating these messages. So Chris is going to be managing our press briefing. You'll give us opportunity to, to share with you our statement, but also be able to answer questions that you may have. Yeah.
Thank you. And now Job has brought his laptop.
But
haven't they printed?
We're going to get copies for all of you.
Yeah.
In the benefit of, to make sure we save time, we decided that we read from the laptop and we get the copies printed.
so introduce him to.
So the statement is titled, Stop Attacks on Civil Society. It is dated today, 26th October 2021. We are deeply concerned about the increased episodes of attacks on the sector, state-sanctioned abuse of due process, citizen rights and freedoms. The systematic attack has been mainly targeted at anyone that is seen to be working on electoral democracy, natural resources management, human rights and political accountability. The trend suggests that not only are citizens and their organizations targeted, but rather funding partners and anyone else supporting civic space and citizen organizing. This is not only disturbing, but an expose of the deteriorating human rights situation in the country. Some of the most recent attacks include the ban of unregistered forms of citizen organizing, such as loose coalitions, like the National Election Watch of Uganda in October 2020. The deportation of staff of foreign missions and staff of international NGOs working on elections. The freeze of accounts of several NGOs working on democracy, human rights, and accountability, which started in 2020. Targeted break-ins on NGO premises and homes of staff without any report of investigations from the state. Arrest of civil society leaders such as the Executive Director of AFIEGO, Mr. Dickens Kamugisha, and other staff across the country in October 2021. The Executive Director of Chapter 4 in December 2020, and over 20 civil society election observers in January 2021. The attacks on the media and opposition political actors are also well documented. The attempted assassination of civil society leaders and failure by the police to investigate the incidents in spite of the leaders reporting to the police is very worrisome. For instance, on 16th and 20th August 2021, there was an attempted assassination on a CSO leader in Kampala, and in spite of police visiting the scenes 3 times, they have to date refused to provide the CCTV footage or even any feedback to the victim. The purported ban and halting of activities of over 60 organizations, that is, 54 in August 2021 and 6 in May 2021, preceded by the illegal arrest and incarceration of staff, is the latest in this charade of attacks. We wish to point out that these attacks These targeted attacks are part of a larger scheme by the regime to decimate all progressive democracy and accountability-seeking forces. We also take note that, 1, the NGO Act categorically provides for the manner in which the NGO Bureau should be constituted with a board of directors, an adjudication committee, and district NGO monitoring committees. Without these, as is at the moment, the current formation of the NGO Bureau is not only illegitimate, but also their actions illegal. The arbitrary conduct of some elements within the NGO Bureau, like Mr. Stephen Okello, who has continued to operate with a lot of high-handedness in disregard of the law and due process. Some of his actions have included the refusal to lift his illegal ban on NGOs in spite of fulfilling all the requirements, slapping exorbitant fines on NGOs that have complied with all requirements, refusal to receive documents of certain NGOs seeking to satisfy the requirements, freezing accounts of the affected NGOs and requiring them to seek permission from the illegal NGO Bureau as is at the moment in order to make any transactions. We also have heard from different sources that the regime is determined to decimate the sector. We know that the current regime actions are far from compliance with the law, but rather political. From our sources, we are aware that the actions of the Bureau are being influenced by elements within the military through the Chieftaincy of Military Intelligence, CMI, and the Internal Security Organization, ISO. We have also sadly learned that elements within the NGO Bureau have been asking for bribes from the NGOs in order to help them resolve their issues. This trend is perpetuation of corruption and must be challenged in the strongest terms possible. It should be noted that these attacks and harassment have far-reaching implications for livelihoods and the economy. The freeze on accounts of organizations does not affect the NGOs alone, but also several other people that benefit from the organizations and the constituencies that they service. We wish to categorically state that under our constitution and laws made thereunder, no one should be targeted in the exercise of their freedom of association, like has been in the case of Afiego staff and other NGO staff. Even in the NGO Act, the only punishment for operating without a permit is a monthly fine. Arresting NGO staff is thus illegal and high-handed. We wish to acknowledge the difficult circumstances that our good men and women in the Uganda police operate under, such as poor remuneration, poor accommodation, and delayed pay. In spite of this, the police has been captured by elements within the military and have subjected the force to undue pressure and forced them to undertake all sorts of arbitrary and illegal actions like arrest and harassment of NGO leaders. We thus call upon all Ugandans to join us in pushing back against this state capture. We also need to categorically state that if the regime does not stop its business of disrupting operations of NGOs and their staff, we shall have no option but to mobilize the sector to close shop and start operating informally. This will not only deny the government taxes, but also jobs and services to the people of Uganda. Our commitment. As advocates for the removal of restrictions on civic and democratic space, we reaffirm our commitment and resolve to stand in solidarity with Ugandans that want to exercise their constitutional right to association through all peaceful and legal forms, and will work with all interested Ugandans to continue to demand for a conducive environment for the enjoyment of their civic rights. All indication at the moment is that elements within CMI and ISO are using Mr. Stephen Okello at the Secretariat of the NGO Bureau to harass and persecute civil society organizations, their leaders, and their staff. For God and my country.
Okay, thank you so much, Job. I just want to see whether we should do rejoinders before the questions. Should we do rejoinders before questions?
Let's. Okay.
Yeah, so we can start with individual
Why
rejoinders.
don't we get questions?
Questions first?
Yeah.
Okay, excellent. So if you have a question,
Same time
just like in classrooms, you raise your hand and then you speak.
in the classroom. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Hey, oh, okay. And when we give you opportunity, just still mention your name and the media house for emphasis. Yes, sir.
Yes, my name is Chen from Radio Civic. What are some of the charges that were slapped against the colleagues that were arrested last time.
Okay. So we'll just take a round of questions and then we'll. Yes, sir.
Thank you. I'm Julius from KMA Updates. In your statement, sir, you say they are using one of your colleagues because if it's NGO forum, it means unites all the CSOs.
NGO Bureau.
NGO Bureau, okay.
It's a government entity.
All right. Then, what, according to the Constitution, is supposed to be done to someone who betrays the others? Because it seems to be your colleague. Thank you.
No, NGO Bureau is a government entity. It's not our colleague. It's a regulator. It's a government.
So how does the Constitution provide for you to try that person if at all you would like to go for the courts?
We have a trial law attorney.
But it is here.
And he's here with us today. Any other questions?
Yeah.
All right. So we'll respond to those two questions and then do rejoinders at the same time. So the trial law attorney, you will start, and then we'll have.
We go round.
We'll go round.
Yeah.
Okay, I think the question revolves around Stephen Okero's misconduct at the NGO Bureau and the legal consequences for that misconduct. And in cases where he has committed crimes, like any other criminal suspect, he may be prosecuted either through government using the offices of the DPP if they play ball, or through private prosecution if government doesn't cooperate with arresting the conduct, that criminality. But also there are civil consequences of suing him for violating fundamental human rights of actors in civic space, who the Constitution guarantees freedom of association, freedom of expression, and civic participation in influencing government policy and government affairs. So there are consequences both of a civil and criminal character, and they could be lying in wait for him if he continues on the dangerous path that he has taken. Thanks.
Thank you.
Well, the nature of civil society attacks that we are talking about today include office breaks, physical cyber trailing, administrative harassment, like what the Bureau is doing, the NGO Bureau. But it has escalated to physical attacks and attempted murder or assassination. It's unfortunate that in the wake of assassinations in this country, such a matter is reported to police, and even after installation of CCTV cameras, police is unable for 2 months to retrieve the footage of people that attempted on the life of one of us. Very unfortunate. The arrests of Afiego staff, detention beyond 48 hours on no charge, and release after mounting pressure on the orders, on the above people that were exerting illegal orders on police is very unfortunate. Any attack on civic actors is an attack on citizens of this country. If this situation becomes unbearable, we are going to close these NGOs. These NGOs pay tax, employ people, and contribute to the human development, as well as provide services to Ugandans. We shall close them and act informal as citizens of this country. And then we see who government will harass.
I think it is also very important for us to acknowledge that every time we sit here to discuss issues of civic space, people tend to imagine that we are simply talking about NGOs in this country. But as has been clearly articulated, issues of civic space are no longer restricted to NGOs, but it is all of us. Each one of us in our different sectors, whether you're speaking about governance or otherwise, you are a potential victim of the same. And that is why we must consider taking back our country in terms of the freedoms that are enshrined in our laws. We must exercise our freedoms as we ought to, without fear of intimidation that we know is imminent, but also to give hope to the citizens of this country that we are a country that is governed by a constitution and other legal frameworks that promote the rights and freedoms of our citizens. Ultimately, if this trend continues, we are fighting against our own selves, because civil society as is playing a very complementary role to what the state does, offering actual services to the citizens of this country. What this means is that the clamp on NGOs is also a clamp on services to the people of this country. And so if NGOs close shop, that means there are several Ugandans that will not access legal aid. There are several Ugandans that will miss out on basic services, including employment, by the way. So doing this, we must emphasize by the state, is fighting against its own citizens and also stifling the development of this country, because ultimately the civil society sector contributes very significantly to the economic development of Uganda.
Let me just add one thing that throughout the weekend I was involved in trying to secure the freedom of the team from Afiego. And I think for me I was really humbled by the level of helplessness of our police officers. That you have very decent men and women in the Uganda police trying everything possible to do their work and do it well, and do it amidst very, very difficult circumstances in terms of the working environment and compensation. But then there are powers above them whom they have to respond to. And so when you have an institution like the police, which actually is ordinarily a civilian institution, because the police is the institution that protects citizens. The military protects the state and our territorial integrity. The police protects the citizens. So when you have an institution like the police that has been captured by the regime and is now commanded by the military, you've blurred the lines of accountability and responsibility. And therefore, as citizens, we become the real victims together with the police. So I was able to discover something that is almost an open secret, that all of a sudden, the officers and men in the Uganda police are as victims as the citizens ourselves. And therefore, it is imperative upon us as citizens to be able to take up the responsibility, discharge our constitutional functions of protecting and defending our constitutions, which includes protecting and defending the police force from absolute capture, because that's really where we are almost headed to.
Okay, thank you. What Angela, Eunice, and Tricia? In that order.
Angela, come on.
Angela, please.
I would like to just add that government has painted civil society as an enemy of the state. The work we do as civil society is mandated by our constitution and Ugandan laws. If there are any violations on the part of civil society, government has the mandate to call us to a table like this one and have dialogue over those issues and ensure that they are peacefully resolved. But when we see acts like arrest and incarceration of staff of NGOs, that spells doom for this country. This is a regime that came to power with a 10-point program, one of them being promotion of democracy, promotion of rule of law, promotion of governance. But right now we see a total reversal of our democratic gains, and this is important for us to make the connections. Right now it may seem like an attack on civil society, but these are really red flags about the state of Ugandan democracy. So the conversation we need to be having as citizens is, how is Uganda progressing? Is Uganda progressing, or we see a total reversal of the gains that this government, this regime, why it went to the bush to fight for freedom, for democracy, for rule of law, but we see the same actions accelerated against citizens. The actions against NGOs are not simply against actions against NGOs. They are actions against citizens, and it's time for us, and I'm glad that the media, you're the mouthpiece of citizens, and you have the platform to actually help citizens understand the current state that we are in and why we need as citizens to push back on these violations, to push back on this level of oppression. So my call and appeal is to all of us as Ugandan citizens not to view the actions of the state and the regime as isolated and separate to NGOs. They are not. They are actions against the citizens of Uganda. They are actions of a state that fears its own people. Because you might ask the question, what was the violation that was committed by the staff of Afiego, and why are they in police? That will tell you that it's not a legal issue, it is a political issue that we must address politically. Thank you.